Everybody, it's Dr. Eric Balcavage and Dr. Erica Riggleman. Good afternoon, Dr. Erica. How are you today?
I'm doing great.
Hey, well, we have a really special guest on today. It's Professor Brian Peskin. And I got to tell you, I found his work a number of years ago when somebody mentioned to me, had I read this book, it's called the Peo Solution. And I was like, I don't know. I got so many books to read. I don't have time for it. But when I read the book, it really kind of helped me understand a little bit more about what we talk about with cellular hypothyroidism. We always talk about thyroid physiology being really starting at the cellular level. And Brian's work in the Peo Solution really brought home like, wow, this is one of the major factors that's probably triggering cell stress and cellular hypothyroidism. So we had to get him on, and now we got him on. Professor Brian Peskin, thank you for coming on the Thyroid Answers Podcast. How are you today?
Very good. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So we got to get some background of you. You sent me your bio and all the information.
Yeah.
I mean, you've written a bunch of books. You've lectured around the world. You've got papers that you've put out, and you talk about being your background. But can you just explain it in very simple terms, who you are and what it is you do as a background, and let the listeners know what they're missing?
Sure. Well, I'm an electrical engineer from MIT. That's my degree.
Okay.
How did I get into medicine? Very simple, personal. My wife became diabetic, doing everything right. In her 30s, type 1. Thin, exercise, high carb, low fat. This was 30 years ago. So it was, Brian, what do I do? And she's a pharmacist by training. So I did what anybody would do. I ran down that health store, looked one book by somebody like Atkins, high fat, high protein, no carbs. And just the opposite by Ornish. Both people come good universities, good physicians. Who do I believe? My comment is I believe nobody. I believe science. I'm a scientist. So is there a science? Yeah, there's two: biochemistry, and even way above that is physiology. Luckily, I live in Houston. We have MD Anderson Cancer Center. They were kind enough to let me spend years in their medical library, the Jesse Jones Library at the medical center. And after many years, it was, my goodness, the science says this. Everybody's being told 180 degrees opposite. In many cases, the actual cause of the problem is being purported as a solution. So after many years, luckily I came across Otto Warburg's work, and he was an MD PhD, Nobel Prize winner in Germany, greatest physiologist of the 20th century, hands down, would do an experiment 10 times before he'd publish, was never found materially wrong in anything he's ever published, unprecedented. And he was all cancer and hypoxia. So it really got me going. Why the heck is this happening? And it turns out I got lucky. I figured, what's the one socioeconomic condition, regardless of how much money somebody makes or anything? The food we eat. Because wealthy people get cancer, wealthy people get hypothyroidism, wealthy people get all the diseases, almost as much as the poor ones. So it's nothing to do with money. What's the one common thing? What goes in your mouth? What's the number one process thing? Because everything is not equal. That's the first thing an engineer understands. Some things are much more relevant than others. It's called orders of magnitude. And it turns out that processed oils is the number one problem in the world. People are not spending the time they should be on it. And the reason is because we have 100 trillion cells, and just like I said, every one of those 100 trillion cells has a bilipid membrane. 25 to 33%, a quarter to a third, are these oils. I call them PEOs for parent essential oils. They are the only two oils, substances the body can't make that goes into the cell membrane. Has to come from food. And the problem today is at least half of them, if not 70% of them, are adulterated and not fully functional to get long shelf life. Reason is you walk by a fish market and a commercial supermarket, you smell it. And that's the oxidized fish oil. It's going bad. It's going rancid. Well, the food processors have to make it where that can't happen. So they typically take the omega-6 cooking oils because they're less reactive. They're more stable to begin with. And they completely adulterate them. That's called a trans fat, an interesterified fat. There's many ways to do it, but it stops them from going bad. and it stops the oxygen transfer. The answer is not to stop them from oxidizing. That's their normal function. When they're in the body, antioxidants stop that, unless it's supposed to be. And we are getting all the adulterated oils. And this is the reason for, by the way, the oxidized cholesterol is coming in ready-made from our foods. It's not going bad in the body. So I spend the time on 99% of the issue, the parent omega oils in the cell membrane. In the body, there's 11-to-1. So everybody who's saying, oh, we're overdosed on omega-6. You are overdosed on omega-6. Adulterated, non-functional, highly impaired omega-6. You're not overdosed on fully functional omega-6. And it all started there. And I started in the right place. And that is why I can predict and never wrong, because I started in the right place. Everybody else is on the outside of the circle. I'm in the center. You can't go from the outside and go to the center. You got to be in the center, go to the outside, and then you get everything right. So physiology is the key. There's very few physiologists today. That means the cell structure. Actually, I do theoretical because in the membrane, it's hard to see the actual what's in there. But you can tell on a macroscopic level, 25 to 33%. There's no DHA, there's no EPA, there's very little, any of what's called the derivatives. So there's the parents, parent omega-6, parent omega-3. They allow the body to make what's called the derivatives. That's the fish oil stuff, the EPA, DHA, GLA, AA. The body makes all of them as needed, and that's the key. And it makes very few of them because they act as hormones. They're called prostaglandins. So they have a very, very short lifespan, and they're very minute quantities. Less than 1% of the parents are converted into derivatives. And the mistake the whole medical profession made years ago, because they didn't have the high-resolution chromatography that we have today, they thought up to 30 or 40% would go to derivatives. So the answer was give the body the derivatives, be gentle on it, do all the work for it, and la. No, you've just given a super pharmacologic overdose, which anybody taking fish oil, I hope you'll stop that immediately, get your money back, because you're getting overdose from 20 to 500 times overdose on a daily basis. So that's it in a nutshell. I really tried to prevent type 1 diabetes. I failed, but nobody in the world has been able to bring a type 1 back. I can make the insulin more effective because these oils in the cell membrane are where all the hormones go. So if you want maximum hormone effectiveness, you need a very, very strong cell membrane. And this does it. Your immune system goes through the roof. You can ask me any kind of questions, but that's the gist of how I got into this.
Yeah.
So I use the engineering precepts. The input's the food. The system is you. The output is your state of health and how fat you are, how thin you are, how sick you are. 3-component deal. And the system I decided was perfect. It's like a Ferrari, it doesn't run right. Well, I can look at the timing. I can look at the injection system. I can look at the spark plugs. But nobody thought, did the idiot put the wrong gasoline in there? He wanted to go cheap, so he put unleaded, cheap garbage when it needs the highest octane in the world. And I just said it was the fuel. The system works perfect. God doesn't make mistakes. Our body, I am amazed. In spite of the wrong fuel, how good we are and how long we last before completely falling apart. If you put the wrong fuel in a car, you put in water, it's going to die in 10 minutes. It just won't run. But we put the wrong fuel in, you last for years. Of course, you're sick as heck. But that can all be prevented. We're not designed to be exhausted, overweight, a human billy goat, hungry all the time. The only reason we're hungry all the time is the body wants these oils, and nature goes, make doc hungry again. Doesn't have any of the oil, so it's eat, crave. You don't get the oils, eat, crave again. Crave, crave, crave. You're a human billy goat. You start putting these oils in, you only need to eat twice a day. You can even eat once a day. The appetite's naturally fulfilled, not squashed, naturally fulfilled. So it's a very exciting field, and the applications are absolutely enormous. From thyroidism to cancer to diabetes to heart disease, we can talk about all that.
So we talk about, I think what you said was great summary of what's going on. But for the listeners, one of the big things I want to make sure that you understand what Professor Peskin's talking about is that all your cells are made of membranes, and those membranes have fat as part of those membranes. And
half protein, half fat. You're right.
Yeah, so it's got proteins, it's got fats, but the fats make up a good portion of the cell of these membranes. And the quality of those membranes is based on the quality of the fat we take in. And if that fat and the fats and the oils that we take in are already pre-damaged from cooking and processing, then those damaged fats and oils become part of our cell membrane. And so that impacts our health. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is when we eat these, when the fats are in their healthy, natural state, we call those unadulterated fats, correct? And when
Yes.
we eat fats that are damaged, we call them unadulterated. But how does that impact what happens in the cell? One of the things we talk about. Well, one of the things we talk about is that was something called the cell danger response. And anything that triggers a change in energy within the cell can trigger a cell danger response. And we talk about how hypoxia, lack of oxygen within the cell, can trigger a cell danger response. It can decrease cell metabolism. It can deactivate thyroid hormone locally. So how do these adulterated fats impact oxygen across the membranes?
Well, it's highly impaired. And if you look at every disease, there's always hypoxia. Ask any physician, how do I have a high immune system? How do I cure disease? Cellular oxygen. Now, this is not oxygen in the bloodstream. That's you put in a finger into the pulse oximeter. Everybody is 92, 94, 96, 98, unless you have a disease. So that isn't the issue. It is in the cell itself. And the way the oxygen goes across is it has to diffuse. But just imagine how much oxygen would diffuse if you had a piece of plastic there. Nothing. Furthermore, the oxygen could disassociate from the cell membrane itself and give more. So this is the whole cause. Otto Warburg showed cancer is caused by a 35% decrease in cellular oxygen over a sustained period of time. It was proven in 53 and 55 in America with scientists. They gave hypoxia to the patients, and in the heart, they would get cancer. It wasn't patients, but it was heart tissue. And it always developed in the oxygen deprived over a 2-year period. With full oxygen, never. So hypoxia accompanies virtually everything. It's huge in diabetes. That's where the neuropathy is mainly coming from. And it impairs healing. That's where I spend a lot of time in. So when you're fully oxygenated, if you're an athlete, through the roof, you recover 25% faster, you have 30% more endurance. It's just incredible. But just think of it as a plastic membrane. Nothing will go into that cell, or it's highly impaired. And Dr. Land showed in 1980, you get the percentage of adulterated oils that you consume. So if I'm eating fast food all the time and they're a huge provider of ruined oils because they have to have those oils last a month, and even the commercial supermarkets, even the finest of restaurants, they're all using adulterated oils that have extenders in them, that have preservatives in them, so they don't go bad. There's virtually no smell. So if you're going to any commercial supermarket and getting the regular oils, you are highly impaired. You're killing yourself, and you're unknowingly giving yourself the disease. That's the biggest cause with diabetes, unknowingly. So you have a cell-resistant membrane or a hormone-resistant membrane, and that's why you need more and more insulin. That's called insulin resistance. So that's the proof the cell isn't getting the hormone it needs, because the hormone can't go into it. It's like being knocked out with the plastic. Excellent question.
So let's say that somebody has been consuming some of these adulterated oils for some time now, and they're starting to develop issues. What advice do you give to somebody who's looking to make a change, or can you even undo the damage that's already been done?
Absolutely can undo. So the first thing is less processed food. Not cut it out completely. You're not going to do that. You don't have to do that. But cut it in half. If you're going to fast food 4 times a week, either go twice a week. If you do 4 times, eat half of it. Don't get the French fries. That's what's fried. Eat half of the bun. That's what I always do. So the bread down by half, because they're always using cooking oil in there too. And over time, The good oils will replace the bad, but it still goes in as a percentage. So it takes about a year to have the good oils replace the bad in the cell membrane. For fish oil, because you're getting such an overdose, it's 18 weeks to get a proper cell ratio. Because what happens is that DHA EPA goes into the cell, kicks out the parent omega-6. Remember, it's 11-to-1 is in the body. The average cell has 4-to-1 times more parent omega-6 than omega-3, unless you're overdosing on a supplement. And the fish oil people are completely ruining the cell membrane structure. And I've got a huge medical journal article that came out in 2017 we'll talk about how the cell membrane is actually sensing the wrong structure or an adulterated structure. It keeps a low-grade inflammation 24 hours a day. It's unbelievable. I'll tell you now, it's 2017. These papers are very small. It's called Nature Reviews Molecular Cell Biology. See, it's not a physician's magazine. They read Lancet, New England Journal of Medicine, JAMA. Nobody's reading this kind of stuff, but this is where I live. Prostaglandins, leukotrienes, essential fatty acids. I am in the scientific journals because there's tons of them, but the word never gets out. This article I read 3 times. I couldn't believe it. I saw no one pick it up. The body is so smart, it is trying to rid you of this stuff, and it doesn't happen. It's a tragedy. It's absolutely tragic. But there is hope. You get better and better for the first year. And with the fish oil, 18 weeks to get that pharmacologic overdose out of the cell membrane. Because the parent omega-6 is key. It's key in the brain. It's key in every cell. And if you're taking too much flax oil, for example, that's the parent omega-3, you'll get an overdose of that too. And it gets forced into the cell membrane improperly. We have a genetic basis, but if you're eating, the body can't burn it all up. That's called beta oxidation. It can't do it. It can't throw it all into fat. It goes into the tissue, into that cell, and it doesn't work right. So we're our own worst enemy. It's a tragedy, an absolute tragedy. And that's why I'm so passionate about this, because people are trying to do the right thing and harming themselves unknowingly. Fish oil was a good first attempt with EFAs, but they're not an EFA. They're not essential. Your body makes DHA and EPA all day long, and it doesn't need much. In the brain, for example, it's loaded in the brain. DHA is 14%. Arachidonic acid is 10%. And the ratio of parent omega-6 to omega-3 in the brain is 100-to-1. There's not a lot in there, but the ratio is 100-to-1, and it acts as a modulator. So that's key. So we keep getting misled. But the fish oil is America's #1 supplement, I believe, today. And it is the #1 insidious, most harmful thing you can ever take. I've been on the record. It is a poison. It's just not a 0. It's a -20 because it completely raises havoc. And when I hear the results of it, my skin's better. How, sir? There is none in the skin. For example, the skin is 100% parent omega-6. The same as the inner lining of the artery called the intima. Parent omega-6, if you're taking fish oil, is displacing that, and it's highly, highly reactive. So the fish oil goes bad instantly. Best fish oil, by the way, has a p-anisine value of 19. That is phenaldehyde measurement, which is very, very bad because they spread, they raise havoc. Toxic is 20. So the best fish oil in the world sits at a 19. We're not supposed to be eating it. Now, you can eat the fish, but remember, fish oil is a processed food. This is what people aren't getting.
Yeah, so I think and I want to get into the fish oil in a second, but I want to kind of tie this together for a second. So
yeah, because the oils do much more. The parent oils do much more.
Right. So one of the key things for our patients who are listening, and the listeners and doctors who are listening, we always talk about cellular hypothyroidism, that something triggers that cell danger response. And what Professor Peskin's talking about is these adulterated oils create up this kind of plastic barrier to the cell membranes. You create the hypoxic state. And I think we've talked about this on the podcast before. When you have cellular hypoxia, decreased oxygen in there, that triggers something called hypoxia-inducible factor alpha. And that hypoxia-inducible factor alpha will deactivate, it'll upregulate deiodinase 3, which increases your deactivation of both T4 and T3. So you will have cellular hypothyroid symptoms, and your gland can still look fine. So that becomes really important. He made a tie-in to his wife and diabetes. And one of the key things is to get thyroid hormone, or to get glucose into the cell. For that, you need insulin. But for that glucose transporter that requires insulin, you need cellular levels of thyroid hormone. If there's cell stress, one of the last things the cell is going to do is to bring more glucose into the cell. It decreases the transport of glucose into the cell on purpose. It's a protective mechanism. Why? Because when there's decreased energy within the cell, the body registers that as a danger response, and it wants to kick in a different process, something called autophagy, or self-eating, to start cleaning up the debris, start cleaning up the cell. So becoming insulin resistant is part of the cell danger response. It's part of cellular hypothyroidism, and it can all be driven by these healthy, what we call sometimes healthy foods that you're eating that are just loaded with these adulterated fats. So we have to keep that in mind. Now, Brian, I gotta say, there's so much literature and research of people saying, no, my doctor said omega fish is good, omega fish, fatty acids, fish oil to the rescue. This is going to save people. Now, you and I know that that's not the case. And so I want you to really touch on, you touched a little bit on how omega-3 creates damage, and EPA, but I want you to talk about the effect of EPA, and even more importantly, the DHA, and how that really ties into mitochondrial problems, which is one of the major problems we see in the country today. Can you do that?
Huge article came out 2017, Journal of Biological Chemistry, and it was DHA lowers cardiac mitochondrial enzymatic activity by replacing linoleic acid, parent omega-6 in the phospholipidome. What that means is the overdose of the DHA goes into the mitochondrial membrane. In the mitochondria, just like you said, that's the energy production. Cardiolipin is all parent omega-6 when it comes to fatty acids, strictly parent omega-6. If you take fish oil in the normal dosages, and take a look at your capsule level. 1,000 milligram is standard. It's at least 60% DHA, EPA. DHA, EPA are the same. They're called retroconvertible. So if I take EPA, the body converts it to DHA, or DHA goes backwards as needed. So you look at them as one. They're essentially the same. You get an overdose, and it forces out the parent omega-6. And here's their words. The first thing they did was they looked at the enzymatic level in the mitochondria of the heart in people, and diabetics have elevated levels of DHA. So if you're taking fish oil, you're mimicking a diabetic. Is there anybody that wants to mimic the blood chemistry and the cellular structure of a diabetic? If you do, you're insane, and I can't help you. But here's what they said. That was the first thing they wanted to look at. And then undergoes modification, includes the depletion of the most abundant species, parent omega-6, and it's not just limited, it goes on. And then it said, when you take the omega-6, it rescues the mitochondria of the heart. So anybody saying fish oil is good for the heart is a lunatic. They haven't seen this. Again, I've seen nobody reference this article. It was absolutely brilliant. And Cochrane reviews, the best independent reviewer of medical journal articles in 2018, unequivocally stated EPA, DHA do not decrease heart disease, do not decrease stroke, do not decrease death. It's worthless. And I just saw a video today. Somebody sent me and said, Brian, you're going to get a kick out of this. Number one thing they said is how it's good for the heart. How? It's not in there. I just told you it ruins the cardiac output in the mitochondria, which means your heart doesn't have any energy. So it can't go boom, boom. It goes, and that's cardiac output. It's going to go down. So nobody is looking at the science anymore. It's like a religion. Fish oil's great, no matter how many times it's shown. Fail, fail, fail. They only got one indication, by the way, to lower super high triglycerides. There's 3 pharmaceutical companies selling fish oil. Pharmaceutical companies run drug studies. That's what they do. I assure you, every study has been attempted and they all fail. They've got nothing for the heart. There is one that just came out. They think they do, but the placebo was mineral oil, which is basically a poison. They're giving 4 grams a day. When people told me this, how they got a better result with the fish oil than the mineral oil, I said, whatever it is, they're giving a poison. I didn't know it was mineral oil. I said, you research it. It took them about a day to figure out what the heck was in there. It was mineral oil. You want to be taking mineral oil? It's a toxic. I don't know how they could even allow that as a placebo. I could see olive oil as a placebo, but not that. So we keep getting misled. But read Cochrane reviews. Unequivocal, 25,000 studies, or there's some insane number of studies with fish oil. They found 25 that were double-blind placebo, even worth analyzing. The rest are observational or so poorly done, they're not worth the paper they're printed on. Here's what everybody needs to know. Even doctors don't read their own medical journals and believe it anymore because publishing has become an end in itself. When you have a person having his name on 2, 3, 4, 500 medical journal articles, you want to ask why. Number one, why would there be 1,000 studies of anything? For gravity, you have 2. I throw a brick off the building, it falls. You do it again to show it doesn't go up to the sun, we're done. I'm not repeating the study every 2 weeks to see if it changed. We're done. That's why I love the science. Studies aren't science. In Peo Solution, the first 3 chapters on how we are highly, highly misled with the term relative risk compared to absolute risk. So they give you this number, oh, you're going to live 30% longer. Well, how? Because heart disease is the #1 killer. What do you mean I'm going to live? No, I'm not. But that's the relative risk. So we get fooled. So I hope people really consider getting Peo Solution. It's written for physicians, but it's understandable. And I'm about the only guy that gives the footnote right on that page. So when you see a reference, you see the title, you see where it came from, and I give you the exact quotes. I don't translate it. Now, I'll translate it into layman's terms if it's technical, but you will also see the actual quote. Nobody else will do that because more often than not, the headline of what they say isn't what was in the article. They mislead you and they fully understand you're not going to take the time, you're not going to take the effort to research and see what exactly was said. I publish nothing until I see the journal reference or the reference or the reference. I will spend an immense amount of time looking at the original article and making sure it says what it's supposedly said. More often than not, it doesn't. I don't use quotes of quotes, ever. So we keep getting misled. It's a very, very sad state of affairs today. The internet's actually made it worse because everybody thinks they know something and they pull up something, but they can't discern the tin from the gold. So this guy says one thing, this guy says another. How do you know what's right? I can't give you that. If you can't discern tin from gold, I can't help you. And most people, tragically today, can't, but they don't have the reasoning capability. That's what I went to school for, the critical thinking. So I'm in a very good position for that. But this is all I do. This is no hobby to me. This is all I do. Parent essential oils, it's called eicosanoids, it's called leukotrienes, it's called essential fatty acids. I stay in this one field morning, noon, and night for 20 years. To my knowledge, there's virtually no one else that does. One colleague in Toronto, Canada that does. That's it.
So if we kind of tie that back up, we'll talk a little bit more about the Peo solution here in a minute. But when we were talking about the EPA and DHA, what I wanted to make sure I kind of summarize is that DHA, as it becomes incorporated, especially into the mitochondrial membrane, it actually has, and Brian talks about this in his book, it has more double bonds. So it's more likely to be damaged. And the mitochondria is like the furnace of the body. It always puts off some exhaust. And that DHA gets more readily damaged. And to tie into what we call our cellular hypothyroid model and all the things that that come from that, these multiple system adaptive disorders that come from that, like neuropathy or like diabetes, is that when you have damage to those mitochondrial membranes, we lose function of something called your electron transport chain. And when we do that, iron becomes free. That iron can then trigger more oxidative stress. And again, that can start to trigger our cell danger response. And we've talked about this as a potential link. And Brian, if you want to kind of add to this, you can add to this from your knowledge base. But one of the big challenges right now is that we have everybody talking about Lyme's the root of problems in autoimmunity, mold's the issue, bacteria's the issue, virus the issue. The big issue is when you have a hypoxic state, you get damage to these membranes and you get free iron floating around. Now you have free iron that reactivates dormant viruses and perpetuates a chronic infection. Do you see that as part of the research that as part of your research that this the compromise or the adulterated oils can trigger the hypoxic effect that can have a significant impact on iron physiology?
No, I have not looked at the iron. I'm glad you mentioned that. I learned something today. But everything is correlated. And like you said, you start becoming hypoxic. And this is the number one reason for hypoxia. And you want maximum oxygenation. That is the best way molds and viruses. By the way, a mold spore, there's a new one that just came out. It's probably vancomycin resistant mold. It's in all the hospital rooms. They hushed it up for a year and a half. It just hit the news all over the place in the med journals the past week. They hush it up for a year and a half. People are dying with a compromised immune system. So if they're in the hospital for 30 days, hydrogen peroxide doesn't even kill this stuff. But a mold spore cannot germinate. It cannot spread in a high oxygenated environment. That was proven in 1955 with Otto Warburg's study with the heart and cancer, because they put mold spores into a rodent and it couldn't germinate with fully functional oxygen. They didn't know about the oils back then, but they kept the oxygen levels high. Nothing germinated. They had low oxygen partial pressure. All of them germinated. So this is known. The way the body deals with viruses too is these PEOs, they engulf the virus and they kill it. So this is Mother Nature's natural protective. The number one anti-inflammatory is PGE1. That's the first derivative of omega-6. So you get GLA and then it makes PGE1. So it's the body's number one anti-inflammatory. It keeps inflammation from becoming high when it's not supposed to be. Of course, you have inflammation initially. I cut my finger off. It's going to bleed like the dickens. You want inflammation. So inflammation is not necessarily bad all the time. Initially, you want it, but then you want it going away. So PGE1 is critical. It's also a vasodilator. Arachidonic acid makes prostacyclin, PGI2. That makes the platelets not stick together, makes it not stick to the artery wall. I don't know how you would get a heart attack with maximum anti-inflammatory PGE1 and PGI2. It's also a vasodilator, so it gives more blood flow. Nobody talks about blood flow. If you don't have any blood flow, nothing's going anywhere. These are the way the body naturally does it. I never hear anybody talk about these two. And by the way, the omega-3 side of prostaglandins, insignificant. They are 1/20th as powerful as the omega-6. So the whole thing with this omega-3 stuff is, I was trying to find out, where are they coming up with it so good? They're trying to come up with it's a relative good, because if you're overdosing on omega-3 derivatives from fish oil, is displacing the omega-6, which they think you're getting overdosed on. That's the whole thing for this. That is the only science they have, and it's dead problematic, because if it's displacing the fully functional parent omega-6, now you have mitochondria doesn't work. You have 100 trillion cells that don't work. And by the way, there's more mitochondria than cells. So if you have 100 trillion cells, just imagine how many mitochondria you have. It's a horrible state of affairs, and I'm glad we're talking about this, because not enough people know it. The medical world doesn't even talk about it. It's just tragic.
Yeah, I think it's I can't even explain to you how many patients come into my office that are already taking a fish oil, and they'll write that they've been taking it for 4 years, 5 years, 10 years plus straight. And whether they saw a TV commercial saying that it was good for inflammation or their doctor recommended it, they think they're doing something perfectly good when really it's probably doing them more harm than actually good.
It's not probably. Number one, people need to know, Doc, that fish oil automatically oxidizes at room temperature. DHA spontaneously becomes rancid at 70 degrees. What's our temperature? 98.6. So all this fish oil you're taking, I don't care how much vitamin E is in there, the body can't deal with it. Dr. Rowan, co-author of Peo Solution, sent me a great article. Lipofuscin, SEH spots on the hand. Well, they looked at monkeys. They gave them fish oil. You get the lipofuscin in the internal organs. So anybody with H spots on their hand, I have none. You shouldn't have any. You have those H spots in your internal organs, and fish oil goes rancid immediately. 98.6, it is going rancid like you wouldn't believe. And Dr. Rowan also sent me cold water fish have 14 times less, not 14%, 14 times, 1,400% less than the cold water fish. So the warmer we get, what is fish oil? It's antifreeze for a fish. We're not living in 30-degree water. Now, in the brain, it's 14%, I told you, but the half-life of that is 2.5 years. We need 7 milligrams a day. Fish oil people, take a look at the dosages you're taking. You need 7 milligrams. This is the distribution, so I'll double it. I'm a conservative guy, an engineer. 15 milligrams. You're taking 20 to 500 times too much on a daily basis. And it's all going bad, just like you said. So what does this do? It takes the natural antioxidants you have for the brain to protect it there, the eye to protect it there, and it goes into the bloodstream to try and protect it from this idiot that didn't know what he was doing, that took this supplement that he saw on the news, and now there's none left in my brain. Where do you think Alzheimer's coming from? It's a cardiovascular disease. All the capillaries in the brain are pure parent omega-6. Capillary is where the nutrient transfer takes place. Now, if you're brain dead and you can't think and you have no memory, you're not getting the nutrient. You're not getting the oxygen. We're doing it to ourselves. This directly correlates with processed food and the fish oil craze. We never used to have dementia like this or Alzheimer's. It's everybody's biggest fear now. It beats cancer, heart disease. They're petrified of becoming a human zombie. And it's horrible. I've seen people die with this. And it's just the biggest tragedy. There's no hope for them right now.
Yeah.
It is a vascular disease. And you keep that blood flow going with these parent oils, it's not going to hit your brain. It's going to flow just as well as the rest of the body. Very good.
So there's a limitation of resources on the body too. We make a certain amount of energy when we're efficient at making energy. And if we're putting in foods into the body that are adulterated, damaged, these damaged fats that then trigger more inflammation, oxidative stress, the body automatically is going to go into cell danger mode. And the cells communicate with each other saying, hey, we've got a threat here, we have to deal with it. So everybody's looking many times for the outside solution, the virus or the organism or the simple, or the thing that could be triggering it. And really,
genetics, that's the big thing, right?
Right.
We're all genetically screwed up. I assure you, it's not genetics. Something has to tell the genes what to do. And everything is the cell with these oils. They modulate. That's the methylation, on or off. It slides up, it slides down, turns it on, turns it off. It's called epigenetics. It was a very big thing. It's not talked about much now. Everything is genetics, and they are getting virtually nowhere. They get lucky in one area, and they get some good results, and it doesn't extend anywhere else. And you've got to go, if this is so good, if this is the answer, why doesn't it extend? And you never get a good answer out of these people. But that's tragically where all the money is, all this personalized medicine garbage, and it is garbage because we have the same physiology, same biochemistry. I can't live underground like a termite. We're all going to die. There's little variations. I take these oils, so you go in the garage, you turn the car on, don't anybody do it. Close the door. We're both going to die of carbon monoxide poisoning, but I'm going to last a little longer than you because I got these oils, so I'm better cellular oxygenated. But you can't beat physiology and biochemistry. These are physical laws, and it has nothing to do with genetics. We've been completely misled. Another tragedy. I mean, that's my biggest word. This is a tragedy, that's a tragedy. The one good thing is I'm about solutions. These oils are the biggest bang for the buck, the closest thing to the fountain of youth you will ever have. It's complementary to any modality you're doing. But if you don't start at the cell membrane of every one of those 100 trillion cells and have a strong cell structure, you're deficient. Nothing else you do is maximized. So this is so fundamental. This is basic science. Even though it's complicated, it's very basic conceptually, because this is the brick and mortar. Other things like vitamins, minerals, they're coenzymes. They make chemical reactions. These oils make my skin. It's smooth as the dickens. My fingernail is like glass. This is what you want in your arteries. No clogs, no anything. I did a pulse wave velocity test for my heart. It came out 20 years younger. Biologically, no exercise.
Yeah, I think
you shouldn't have to do exercise. Fine, but exercise can't compensate for nutritional deficiency. That's what I tell everybody. How can you exercise away a nutritional deficiency? You're crazy. They're two separate things. And state of athleticism, nothing to do with health. Athletes drop dead all the time.
well, this could be part of that mechanism too, because if you're eating foods that have adulterated fats, or you're doing high dose fish oil, and those adulterated fats or the high levels of DHA are being incorporated into your cell membranes, and you're trying to really push yourself athletically, you're trying to really push the mitochondria, you're increasing the oxidative stress, you're increasing the damage to those membranes, and you're just continuing to trigger the process. That's why we see a lot of people who are uber athletes and triathletes and all these people that they look fit, but they have chronic health issues, right? And that's why the people drop dead, is because we have to consider, and this is one of the, for the audience, this is one of the cheapest things you can do, is eat whole natural foods and reduce your processed foods. And a simple change, especially if you're already taking supplemental oils, just make the switch. And with that, Brian, we have to talk about one more thing before we kind of finish today, and that is, because here's the key. There's people.
I'll tell you where these oils come from.
Yeah, they need to know.
Typically seeds, plant-based seeds. So flax oil is good for the parent omega-3. Nature has very little 3. You always hear walnuts are great. The Seventh-day Advents live longer because they're taking walnuts. It's the omega-3. There's 20% parent omega-3. There's 80% parent omega-6. So omega-3 gets the credit for it. But pumpkin seed, evening primrose oil also has GLA in it. Sunflower, safflower. Most of the oils today have been changed to have for frying. So it has a high component of what's called oleic acid. That's omega-9. That's like olive oil. Olive oil is a 0. It's not going to hurt you at all, but it's not going to give you any of the PEOs. It's only about 7% parent omega-6. So it's not the answer at all. So you need to get high parent omega-6 oils, and it's hard to do. That's why I like finding companies that have a variety of seeds blended to a supplement. But it has to be organic, and it has to have more parent omega-6, which is LA, linoleic acid, compared with parent omega-3, which is called alpha-linoleic acid. All it is the 6 has 2 double bonds. The parent omega-3 has 3 double bonds. Like you said, EPA has 5 double bonds. DHA has 6. The more double bonds, the more reactive, meaning the lower temperature, the faster it's going to go bad. So parent omega-6, parent omega-3 do not go bad in the body. Everybody is always asking me about this. Don't they go bad? No. 5, 6 double bonds. You need at least 3 to be a problem at all. And we have enough natural anti-inflammatory to take care of that. It's only when we think we're helping, we're mishelping, but it's unknowingly, that we screw up everything. So these come from seeds. There's also in meat, it has parent omega-6, parent omega-3. Grass-fed is probably 2 to 1 parent omega-6 to parent omega-3. And what's very interesting, even nature, because grass is heavily parent omega-3. Well, I just told you, if you eat a steak, it's 2 to 1 in favor of parent omega-6. The body is burning most of it up. Now, it can't burn most of it up in a human being. It's different. But nature wants that abundance of the omega-6. That's why it's so prevalent in all the foods. I told you in the body, it's 11 to 1. So nobody is getting 20-1 unless they never, ever ate a piece of meat or ever ate a piece of chicken or ever ate any seafood at all. But your body makes DHA EPA even from vegetarians consuming no fish. There's been studies on this, and their numbers are 80% as high as people consuming fish oil. And there's been numerous studies, and I talk about them in the book. You don't need fish. Dr. Rowan sent me 5 cultures that are landlocked that have no fish. And if DHA EPA wasn't made by the body, all these people would be brain impaired, they'd be vision impaired, they'd be nerve impaired, and they're not. So it's absolute garbage. And what the nutritional people do is always say far away. In China, they do this. In Okinawa, they do that. They know full well most people have never been there. And I go, I don't care what they supposedly do over there. I care about what we're doing here in the physiology. That's it.
So Brian, is there, when people are looking for PEO oils from a supplement standpoint, is there something that they need to look at on the label to know that that oil that they're buying isn't a damaged oil?
Absolutely. Has to be organic, has to be cold pressed, has to have more parent omega-6 than parent omega-3. 1-to-1 is the minimal. I like something closer to 2-to-1. You want some ready-made GLA, because the other thing everybody says, oh, the delta-6 enzyme pathway is ruined in everybody. It doesn't work. This is the big thing. The conversion is slow, and you don't get the PGE1, and you don't get the omega-6 derivatives, and the omega-3 derivatives too, because it's the same pathway. Slow is a time constant in engineering. Anybody that says slow, you just bring it out to 24 hours or a day, it's all converted. So it's not that it's slow. That's insane. It shows me you don't know what the heck you're even talking about. It's that it's infinitesimal. Remember I told you before they used to think 37% or 40% of the parents were converted to the derivatives. They go through for the derivatives. The first one is the delta-6 desaturase. It breaks it apart and elongates it. It's technical. You don't need to know what it is. It's just, it makes the derivatives. And here's very interesting, it's preferential to the omega-3 series. And you go, wait a minute, you're saying how omega-6 is so much more important than the omega-3. How can that be? Because you're supposed to be getting so little parent omega-3 and so little parent omega-3 derivatives that the body goes, oh, I got a scarce resource. That's going to be number one. Now you come in and give it 500 times more than the body thought. It shuts down the omega-6 pathway. So you get no PGE1, and that's why inflammation goes rampant, and we're killing ourselves. So nobody knows this. The delta-6 desaturase is preferential to the omega-3 side. So you don't want to be overdosing, because then your omega-6 side is shut down. Means prostacyclin's going to go away. You'll get the platelets sticking together. You're going to get them sticking to an artery. You're going to get the lack of oxygenation, and you're going to get an artery that's constricted. Killing ourselves. This is why heart disease doesn't go away. What they can do is they can fix a heart attack 3 times. Surgeon can fix you and buy you some more time, and then you get another one, and then you get another one. When's it going to stop? It's never solved. Nobody asks, why am I getting these things to begin with? When the guy that came over with the EKG in the 20s, he was told, go home. We don't need you. We don't have any heart disease. 5%, 2% of the population got a heart attack back then. Oh, we live so much longer now. Look at some of the old cemeteries. The average person lived to 70. What you're missing is called the conditional probability. 20% of the people died of the flu. 20% of the people never made it past adolescence. They never made it to 20. They died. So when you get rid of that, the people are living only 10, 12 years longer today, and you can live like a zombie in a nursing home. Didn't say good quality of life, just I can keep you alive on machines. That doesn't count. Right. Wouldn't you go in almost 100 years with better medicine, better surgical techniques, better food, better everything, better hospitals, everything is here. You're living 12 more years? Something should really be bothering people given that. All this good stuff, then we're doing something bad that's counteracting all the good. And it's just a tragedy. And everybody's looking at these artificial means. Drugs are not the answer. They have 20 side effects. Look on any of the TV ads. I can't believe anybody would take any of these drugs because the side effects are 100 times worse than your condition. Death is all over the place. I'm looking going, how can people listen to this? They have to disclose that. But we're one of the 2 countries in the world that allows direct-to-consumer advertising. No one else in the world allows this. So now you have people walking into a doctor, hey, doc, I want this drug. And why is he going to go, no? I'm going to see you 4 times a year now to monitor all the side effects. And then I'm going to give you 3 other drugs for the side effects of this drug. And they don't stop. They don't even care about side effects. Your typical MD, I'll just give you another drug. I'm going, what? This is your rationale? Yeah, I've had doctors tell me that. We don't care.
Well, disease is a profitable business, right? Diseases are very profitable business. Yeah.
Disease.
And so we've got a longer disease span than we've ever had. We take more medications than we ever had. And,
yes.
And health and our lifespan's actually gone down, I think, the last 2 years. So we are not.
3 years. Like 3 years.
Yeah, we're not in a better place. So I want to, if I can wrap the podcast up today, if you had to give people 2 or 3 primary tips based on what we talked about today, what would those 2 or 3 primary tips be? Number 1 would be read the Peo Solution. So I stole that one from you. But what would be the 2 or 3 other tips that you would give somebody?
Anything with fat in the grocery store. Butter, bacon, eggs, cheese, organic. Because all the pesticides, all the residues, all the adulteration is in the fat of the animal. So that is the biggest bang for the buck to spend your money on organic. The fruits and vegetables, I don't want the glyphosate. You've read all about the Roundup stuff with the cancer. It's horrible, but if you don't have the money to get organic everything, spend it on the fat-containing animal-based products. Number 2, any cooking oil you get in the supermarket better be organic. Cold pressed is not sufficient. So if it's olive oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, the oils to fry in are lard used to be great. You can get organic lard even. But ghee is wonderful. That's clarified butter the Indians use. Coconut oil, palm oil. Olive oil is okay for sauteing. You want to cook an egg in it, you can, but you can't deep fry in it. So the cooking oils have to be organic too. And then minimize the garbage you're eating from the restaurants, especially the fryer of the fast food restaurants. Cut that back. So it's bring in good stuff, minimize bad stuff. It's not to 0. You don't need to be a monk. And you're going to be fine. You're going to be so much better than anybody else. That is the 3 biggest things, bang for the buck. I'm all about efficiency.
And then 4 would be, if you're taking fish oil, swap out the fish oil. Swap out the fish oil for some parent essential oil.
And I don't care any marine oil, krill oil, mollusk. They're all the same thing. They're antifreeze for fish. So any marine-based oil, they don't stop. Super krill oil. The next one has to have the next craziest thing. Octopus oil. You name it, they got it. You ever see what krill is? Whales eat them. They're like this microscopic thing. You can't even cook the darn thing. No human being would ever eat such a stupid thing. But they won't stop to mislead you. And what do you think it is? It's a juiced fish. Where do you think this oil is coming from? Oh, it's an enzymatic thing. They're juicing it. They're grinding it up, pounding it up. You get slop, and now you got to get the oil out of it. That's the bottom line. Do you really want that? You really, really want that? Think about it. Nobody does. So, very good.
I think the answer is no. When you start to sit back and think about this is really a really important concept when we talk about what's driving chronic health issues in this country. It doesn't go too far past the food we eat, and sometimes the supplements that we are sold that tell us that these are really healthy for us actually contribute to the problems, and fish oil is probably one of those. So Brian, we appreciate you being on the podcast. If you haven't seen the book or read the book, go get the book, The Peo Solution.
They can find it on my website. It's just my name, Brian Peskin. It's BRIAN. P as in parent, ESKIN.com. There's piles of papers there. If you don't want the book, you can see videos. You can see papers. It won't cost you a nickel. I'm a scientist. I don't sell anything. I consult for nutritional companies, of course. but I don't sell any particular product and I don't endorse any particular product. I just tell you what you need in a product. And I've already given some of that. But if anybody has a question they want to hit me with directly, they can send me an email from the website. And I try and answer them myself. People are shocked. I still do that.
And we'll put all your contact information on there. Erica, do you have any final questions for Professor Peskin?
Nope. I think it's been some great information. It's been a great podcast.
Awesome.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We appreciate you coming on. And if anybody has any questions regarding this podcast, we'll leave in the show notes, we'll put information for Professor Peskin, or you can reach out to Dr. Erica or myself, and we'll be happy to answer those questions. Brian, we're looking forward to the next book when it comes out, and see what else we can learn from you. So we appreciate you being on. Have a great day. Dr. Erica, have a great day as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks again.